Oliver had always been an adventurous person. He loved exploring new places and experiencing the thrill of the unknown. So when he heard about the remote woods in the northern part of the country, he knew he had to visit. Oliver packed his backpack with all the essentials he would need for a few days and set off on his journey. The drive to the woods was long and winding. The roads were narrow, and the trees seemed to tower over him, blocking out the sun. But Oliver was determined to reach his destination. He had heard that the woods were home to some of the most beautiful scenery in the country, and he couldn't wait to see it for himself. After several hours of driving, Oliver finally reached the entrance to the woods. The gate was old and rusty, and it creaked loudly as he pushed it open. He stepped out of his car and took a deep breath of the fresh, crisp air. It was quiet, except for the sound of birds chirping in the distance. Oliver felt a sense of excitement building up inside him as he set off into the woods. The first few hours of his hike were uneventful. Oliver followed the trail, which wound its way through the trees. The scenery was breathtaking, and he stopped every now and then to take a picture or admire the view. He was in his element, completely at ease in the wilderness. As night fell, Oliver made camp in a small clearing he had found. He built a fire and cooked a simple meal of canned beans and rice. He sat by the fire, enjoying the warmth and the sound of the crackling flames. He had brought a book with him and settled down to read by the light of the fire. But as he read, he became aware of a strange feeling. It was as if he was being watched. He looked up, but he couldn't see anything in the darkness beyond the firelight. He shrugged it off and went back to his book. The feeling persisted, though, and Oliver found it hard to concentrate on his reading. He decided to turn in early and get some rest. He crawled into his sleeping bag and closed his eyes, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone in the woods. In the middle of the night, Oliver was awoken by a loud rustling sound. He sat up, his heart racing. He listened carefully, but the sound had stopped. He reached for his flashlight and shone it around the clearing. There was nothing there. He told himself that it was probably just an animal, but he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The next morning, Oliver packed up his camp and continued on his hike. He had planned to spend another night in the woods before heading back, but after the previous night's events, he was eager to get out of the woods as soon as possible. As he walked, Oliver noticed that the trees were becoming denser, and the trail was becoming harder to follow. He had a map and compass, but he couldn't seem to get his bearings. He checked the map again and again, but it didn't make sense. He should have been back at the entrance to the woods by now, but he was hopelessly lost. Oliver tried to stay calm. He knew that panicking wouldn't help him, and he needed to think clearly to find his way out. He decided to retrace his steps and try to find the trail again. But as he walked, he realized that he was going in circles. He was lost, completely and utterly lost. Panic started to set in, and Oliver began to feel like he was in a nightmare. He had never felt so alone and helpless in his life. Days turned into weeks, and Oliver was still lost in the woods. Oliver's once adventurous spirit was now filled with fear and desperation. He had run out of food and water, and his clothes were torn and tattered. He had lost all track of time, and each day felt like an endless cycle of wandering through the same trees and searching for any signs of civilization. He tried to conserve his energy and resources, but it was a losing battle. His mind was clouded with hunger and dehydration, and his body was weak from exhaustion. Each step was a struggle, and he often collapsed onto the ground. too weak to go any further. The woods had become his prison, and Oliver was its captive. He had no way to communicate with the outside world, and he knew that his chances of survival were diminishing with each passing day. As he stumbled through the woods, Oliver's thoughts turned to his family and friends. He wondered if they were searching for him, or if they had given up hope. He hoped that they knew how much he loved them, and that they wouldn't blame themselves for his disappearance. But as the days went by, Oliver began to lose hope. He had resigned himself to his fate, and he knew that he would die in the woods. He found a secluded spot under a large tree, and he sat down to rest. He closed his eyes and waited for the end. But just as he was about to give up, he heard a faint sound in the distance. It was the sound of a helicopter, and it was getting closer. Oliver couldn't believe it. He stumbled to his feet and stumbled towards the sound. He emerged from the trees and saw a rescue team hovering overhead. They lowered a basket down to him, and he climbed in. He was too weak to say anything, but he felt a surge of relief and gratitude. As the helicopter took off, Oliver looked down at the woods below. It was the last time he would ever see them. Oliver was taken to a nearby hospital, where he was treated for dehydration and malnutrition. His family and friends rushed to his side, and they were overjoyed to see him alive. Oliver told them about his ordeal, and they listened in disbelief. After he recovered, Oliver returned home, but he was never the same. The woods had left a permanent mark on him, and he was haunted by his experience. He became more cautious and reserved, and he avoided any situations that might put him in danger. But even though the woods had taken so much from him, they had also given him a gift. They had shown him the true value of life and the importance of family and friends. Oliver would never forget the lessons he had learned, and he would always cherish the memories of his adventure, no matter how harrowing they may have been. It all started with a simple flyer. The paper was glossy, with bold lettering and an image of a serene, sun-drenched landscape. It caught the eye of Maria, a recent college graduate looking for something to fill the void in her life. She had just moved to a new city and was feeling lonely, disconnected from her old friends and unsure of what to do next. The flyer promised a community, a family, a purpose. It spoke of a group of like-minded individuals who had come together to explore the mysteries of life and unlock the secrets of the universe. Maria was intrigued, and so she decided to attend one of their meetings. The location was a nondescript building on the outskirts of the city. Maria arrived early and was greeted by a friendly, welcoming group of people. They were all dressed in white robes, their faces serene and their eyes shining with an otherworldly light. Maria was struck by their sense of purpose and their unwavering conviction. The meeting began with a series of chants and rituals. Maria didn't understand much of what was happening, but she found it all strangely hypnotic. She felt a sense of belonging that she had never experienced before, as though she had finally found a place where she fit in. Over the next few weeks, Maria became more and more involved with the group. She attended their meetings regularly and participated in their rituals with increasing enthusiasm. She found herself drawn to their charismatic leader, a man named Elijah who spoke with a quiet, hypnotic voice and seemed to have all the answers to life's biggest questions. As she became more involved, Maria started to notice some strange things happening within the group. They were becoming more insular, more secretive. They talked about the outside world with disdain, as though it were a corrupt and evil place that they were fortunate to be free from. At the same time, they began to demand more and more from their members. They wanted total commitment, total devotion. They asked for money, for time, for loyalty. Maria didn't mind at first. She was happy to be part of something bigger than herself, but as the demands grew more extreme, she started to feel uneasy. It wasn't until she witnessed one of the group's rituals that she realized just how dangerous they were. The ceremony took place in a dark, candle-lit room. There were strange symbols drawn on the walls, and the air was thick with incense. As the group chanted and swayed, Maria saw Elijah pull out a knife. At first, she thought it was part of the ritual. But then she saw him make a small cut on his own hand, and watched in horror as the other members of the group followed suit. They were all bleeding, all smiling with an ecstatic joy that bordered on the insane. Maria knew then that she had to get out. She tried to leave quietly, to slip away unnoticed, but one of the members saw her and called out to her. They begged her to stay, to join them in their quest for enlightenment, but she knew that she couldn't. Over the next few weeks, Maria tried to put the group out of her mind, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she had narrowly escaped something truly sinister. She started to do some research, to try and figure out who these people were and what they were really about. What she discovered was terrifying. The group was a cult, a dangerous and insidious organization that had been operating for years. They had been responsible for a number of crimes, from fraud to murder, and had managed to evade the law by keeping a low profile and staying under the radar. Maria felt sick with fear and regret. Maria and her group exposed a dangerous cult and helped bring its leaders to justice. They continued to work to raise awareness and prevent others from falling prey to cults. In doing so, they found new purpose and sense of belonging based on truth and compassion.